Compared to the US, North Korea's power is incomparable. And the same goes for any country in the world. The US is more than 80 times larger than North Korea, stretching from the east coast to the west coast with a variety of climates and terrains. From deserts, mountains to plains and jungles. The US has a population about 13 times larger than North Korea. But not everything small is scary. North Korea is not afraid of the US. North Korea considers the US its #1 opponent. Why is that? On one side is the US military superpower with modern technology and global influence. And on the other side is North Korea. A small country but possesses nuclear weapons and an indomitable fighting spirit. So why is North Korea not afraid of the US? North Korea possesses nuclear weapons, something that many other countries in the world can only dream of. Successful nuclear tests and intercontinental ballistic missiles have created an invisible but extremely effective defense shield for North Korea. North Korea has one of the largest military forces in the world, with about 1.2 million active troops and 7 million reserve troops. They focus on drills and prepare for war very early. The powerful artillery force, with thousands of guns placed near the border, can attack the South Korean capital Seoul at any time. This creates a clear threat, making any military action from the US have to be considered very carefully. North Korean leaders, from Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il to Kim Jong-un, are all known for their tough and decisive attitude. They are not afraid to take provocative actions, such as missile tests, nuclear tests, to affirm their determination. Kim Jong-un is especially notable for his leadership style that is not afraid of any opponent, including the US. North Korea believes that if they maintain a tough attitude, the US will be forced to make concessions or at least not dare to take too strong a military action. North Korea also learned from countries like Iraq and Libya, which abandoned their weapons of mass destruction programs and then faced military intervention from the United States. Therefore, Pyongyang realized that nuclear weapons are a ticket to safety for their regime and country. Not giving up nuclear weapons means that North Korea will not fall into the same situation as these countries. North Korea always applies the brinkmanship strategy, raising tensions to the highest possible level but not exceeding the limit to avoid a full-blown conflict. They take advantage of tensions to force the United States and the international community to sit at the negotiating table, make concessions or at least provide aid. Therefore, Pyongyang both maintains its big power position at the negotiating table, and minimizes the risk of war. Thus, North Korea's lack of fear of the United States stems from many factors: the deterrent power of nuclear weapons, wise military strategy, self-reliance, and lessons from history. They have turned fear into a weapon to survive and assert their position in the international arena. North Korea has developed a variety of missiles with different ranges, from short to long range. Missiles capable of hitting the US mainland include Hwasong-12. This is a medium-range ballistic missile with a maximum range of about 4.500 kilometers, 2.800 miles. With this range, the Hwasong-12 can hit targets in Guam Island, a US territory in the Pacific Ocean that hosts an important US military base. Hwasong-14, this is North Korea's first intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, with an estimated range of 10.000 kilometers, 6.200 miles. Hwasong-15, with a range of up to 13.000 kilometers, 8.080 miles. Hwasong-17, this is the newest missile and is considered a monster with the ability to carry multiple nuclear warheads. The Hwasong-17 has a theoretical range of over 15.000 kilometers. Based on the range of the missiles mentioned above, North Korea could target the following areas: Guam, about 3.400 kilometers, 2.100 miles, from North Korea, has been directly threatened by North Korea in the past. Guam has important air and naval bases that support US military operations in Asia. With medium-range missiles like the Hwasong-12, North Korea could potentially strike Guam. Alaska is the closest point to North Korea, with a distance of 5.900 kilometers, 3.666 miles, to Anchorage. This is an area that North Korea's medium-range missiles and ICBMs could easily reach. Military bases and energy infrastructure there could be potential targets. Hawaii is also within range. At a distance of 7.400 kilometers, 4.600 miles, from North Korea. Key military bases such as Pearl Harbor, home to the Pacific Fleet, would be strategic targets. US West Coast, major cities such as Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles are within range of ICBMs such as the Hwasong-14 and Hwasong-15. These are densely populated and economically and militarily important. Los Angeles, located 9.300 kilometers, 5.780 miles, from North Korea, is a potential target as previous tests have shown that the Hwasong-15 missile could reach the area. US East Coast, New York and Washington, D.C. are located between 10.500 kilometers and 10.700 kilometers, 6.520 and 6.650 miles, from North Korea. These are iconic cities that represent American political and financial power. If North Korea can strike these targets, it will be the most powerful deterrent. US interception capabilities. The US possesses advanced missile defense systems, such as THAAD, Aegis, and GMD, ground-based mid-course defense, which can intercept missiles at various stages of their flight trajectory. A missile attack on US territory would cause North Korea to face a comprehensive military response, possibly leading to the collapse of the Pyongyang regime. Thus, with the types of missiles currently available, North Korea can completely threaten many areas of the US. From Alaska, Hawaii, West Coast cities, such as Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, to even East Coast cities, such as New York and Washington, D.C. This creates a deterrent posture that North Korea uses to protect its regime and increase its position in the international arena. North Korea captures US ship. It is true that North Korea dared to capture a US ship during the Cold War. A story that is hard to find. The story began in 1968, when North Korea decided to capture the US ship USS Pueblo, turning it into one of the most famous confrontations between the two countries. The capture of the USS Pueblo remains one of the most embarrassing incidents in US military history, marking the first time a US naval vessel had been captured since the Civil War 153 years earlier. Imagine that at that time, in the middle of the Cold War, the Korean peninsula was as tense as a bowstring. The two North and South were holding each other tightly in the demilitarized zone. While offshore, the US Navy's USS Pueblo was anchored to collect intelligence on North Korea. This ship was a spy ship, meaning it specialized in spying, listening to electronic signals and monitoring what the North Korean military was doing. With the excuse that the US ship had violated its territorial waters, North Korean forces surrounded the Pueblo and easily took control. Soon, the USS Pueblo was captured, and all 83 crew members were taken to North Korea for detention. Within an hour, one US sailor was killed and many others were injured by North Korean fire. The captain decided to surrender, and they were then taken ashore and imprisoned for 335 days in the capital Pyongyang. Tensions escalated to the point where it seemed like war was about to break out. The US had sent a fleet of warships and fighter jets to the Korean peninsula. However, after months of negotiations and tug-of-war at the negotiating table at the truce village of Panmunjom, the US finally had to give in. They agreed to sign a statement apologizing for violating North Korean territorial waters, in exchange for North Korea releasing the sailors. But the story doesn't end there. Shortly after the sailors were released in December 1968, the US announced that it would withdraw the apology, claiming that the signing was just a diplomatic trick to save lives. Today, the USS Pueblo remains in North Korea, becoming a floating museum on the Taedong River, where North Korea boasts that it is proof of its glorious victory over the US empire. Why does North Korea consider the US its #1 opponent? The tense relationship between North Korea and the US is not just recent, but has lasted for decades. Starting from historical events full of tragedy and pain for the people on the Korean peninsula. To understand why Pyongyang always considers Washington its #1 enemy, we must turn to the pages of history from the mid-20th century, when the two countries first encountered each other in a bloody war. The story begins in 1950, when North and South Korea, divided after World War II, went to war. The North was supported by the Soviet Union, while the South was backed by the United States. The Korean War turned the peninsula into a battlefield, leaving millions dead and homeless. The 3-year conflict saw heartbreaking scenes of devastated villages, starving people, and bombs everywhere. American airstrikes reduced many North Korean cities to ashes. Images that are still seared into the minds of many. When the war ended in 1953, the two Koreas returned to their original positions at the 38th parallel, with little change. But for Pyongyang, the feud with the United States did not subside. North Koreans were still taught that the war was the result of American invasion, and that the pain caused by the bombs was a clear demonstration of the brutality of the American empire. Stories of wiped-out villages and broken families became part of the collective memory of North Koreans, cementing the image of the United States as a dangerous enemy that should never be ignored. In the years that followed, as the world plunged into the Cold War, North Korea and the United States found themselves on opposite sides. Pyongyang followed the Soviet Union and China, while Washington continued to support South Korea. Both sides viewed each other with suspicion, especially as North Korea began developing its weapons programs, including nuclear ones. Since the 1980s, North Korea has been quietly researching and building nuclear capabilities to defend against threats from the United States. For them, nuclear weapons are not only a means to protect the country, but also a survival ticket to deal with anyone who dares to threaten. From the 1990s onwards, the North Korean nuclear story became more tense. When the world discovered that Pyongyang was getting closer to possessing weapons of mass destruction, anxiety spread. Negotiations, sanctions, and even threats of war continued to appear. For North Korea, US intervention in their nuclear program was just another way to overthrow the regime, as Washington had done elsewhere. From Iraq to Libya. Therefore, Pyongyang was more determined to keep what it considered the sword that protects the fatherland. In addition, not only tense negotiations or sanctions, but also many direct incidents have aggravated the situation. Media and education in North Korea have played an important role in inculcating a sense of vigilance towards the US. From a young age, North Koreans are taught that the US is the biggest enemy, always wanting to invade and destroy the country. Missile parades, defense drills, and lectures on American imperialism are an indispensable part of daily life, helping to reinforce the image of the US as an eternal enemy that should never be let down. Thus, the hostility between North Korea and the US does not only stem from historical events, such as the Korean War, but is also maintained and developed as an important part of Pyongyang's survival strategy. In the eyes of North Korea, the US is not only a leading world power, but also someone who has devastated their country and is always waiting to overthrow the regime. For Pyongyang, considering the US as enemy #1 is not only an expression of hatred but also a way to maintain unity and strengthen the fighting spirit of the people, helping the country stand firm in the face of all challenges.